Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Energy Between podcast, which is a joint activity production, if you want to put it this way, between the Taiwan Renewable Energy Alliance. My name is Raul, and I'm the chairman of that alliance, and the European Chamber of Commerce Taiwan Low Carbon Initiative. And that's why I'm joined by Annie, who will be my co-host. And I'm also very glad to welcome Bing Fu, who is the Taiwan Country Manager of Lightsource BP, because today our episode will be about solar, which is a very important part of Taiwan's energy transition. Annie?
Hello, I'm Annie. I'm from the ECCT Low Carbon Initiative. I'm very honored to work with Raul again and also Bing. We've worked together for several more formal settings. And today we invite you to have a more human side of the conversation. And so we would like to ask, how you personally come to work in solar development in Taiwan, and could you also share with us about your role at Lightsource BP?
Yep. Thanks, Raul and Annie, for inviting me here. Glad to be here to share some of the backgrounds of me and also solar in general. Yeah, I have been in the solar industry in the last 15 years. Mostly work in the APAC region. I've worked in China, Japan, and Taiwan, responsible for mostly the market developments and open up the market, build a team, develop a pipeline, and make it operational, and focus on solar in the past. And now we are getting more on solar plus storage as the energy, solar energy evolve to be the important mix of the energy source in Taiwan. So it's to get into the industry and look for why I'm in Taiwan. It's really, at the time I was in Japan. We are developing solar projects in Japan, building a pipeline there, and now we look for the next market. And when we look for the next market, we look around APAC regions, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, you name the country. Then we rank the country to see which country has the, first of all, more political stabilized, more democratic country with clear policy, regulatory policies, reasonable lower interest rate, attractive cost of capital, and demand side on what's the strong demand of the market. And that's why when we run the country, I think Taiwan stands out quite strongly because it's second lowest interest rate country compared to just next to Japan in the whole APAC region, which is very strong cost of capital to compete in this industry. And then it's just plus the favorable FIT at the time. And when you look at Taiwan, still not shortage of energy, but needs more variety of the energy into Taiwan to support the growth of the economy. So that's why we entered Taiwan. And plus, I like the food here. I like the food. I like the healthcare system. Everything is just sounds quite nice for me to be here. Yeah.
What's your favorite food?
Well, I started the Niu Mian.
Okay.
Beef noodle soup is great. And Lu Rou Fan, of course.
Classic ones.
Yeah, and Chou Doufu.
Wow.
The stinky tofu is great.
But when did you make that kind of this analysis of the Taiwanese market?
It was 2020. 2020. Yeah, at the time.
So right around COVID.
Exactly.
That's kind of, okay.
When we entered, it's the COVID at the time. I remember I still travel between Japan and Taiwan, and it's like nobody knows what rules that I need to follow. Sometimes I have to be quarantined 7 days, started as 3 days, 7 days, 14 days. But it's still, the market still grows. And even during the COVID, we still see there's a strong growth and people still willing to do continue to build solars here.
What was the kind of the difference that struck you first in terms of the Japanese solar market and the Taiwanese solar market? Is that completely different? Is it similar?
If you look at project development side, it's quite similar, right? Because you always need to go to the rural areas. Even in Japan, Taiwan is similar. In the rural countryside, it's just about how do you communicate with the local communities? How do you secure land, get the trust of community, and what do you be able to do for them? And in return, you can have a more successful project. From the project development side, it's pretty similar. And from the policy side, also quite similar. There's a FIT government-backed Taipower 20 years PA at the time. It's quite similar market, I would say, compared to Japan. And that's why we follow the trend. Like Japan has a boom, then it goes to slowing down, and Taiwan at the time start to take off.
And that was always in Japan, was also for Lightsource.
No, for the previous developer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because why? I mean, I worked also or I still work in the solar part of the market, and Taiwan is a very, in terms of the solar market, and I've been in it like 2015. It has very strong local players. EPCs, back then they were module manufacturers that were developing their own, then there were foreign companies in the mix. It was actually also in between a very small market. So, I mean, small meaning you have no multi-megawatt projects, you have barns and manufacturing sites and so on. Why would somebody like Lightsource BP, when they do this assessment, say, there's, we're all in business, so where's the spot? What's Lightsource BP bringing to the Taiwanese market?
Yep. If you look at Lightsource BP for become 100% of BP-owned subsidiaries in last year, 2024. We are mostly focused on developing projects around the globe, right? Around different markets. We need to expand. Our target is to build a pipeline. We need to run around 3 or 3.5 gigawatts of solar projects every year. And every market we have to look at. And to why Lightsource BP wants to be in Taiwan, really, they are looking at the market fundamentals again, strong demand growth, strong demand. And regardless what the short-term view is, Taiwan still needs renewables. As at the time, they still have 20 gigawatts of target by 2025. And there's still a lot of the FIT is good. And there's still limited, at the time, still limited foreign investor to coming in. And we have the first mover advantage. Plus, we have the know-how development capabilities based on other countries. So we just think it's a market we should be in. Have a position and the long-term view about Taiwan.
Because it's very interesting. What's your academic background? Because when you were start talking in terms of looking at markets, it came more from the financial economic side, or you're an engineer? What's kind of your background?
You get a good guess. I have a bachelor degree of economics, and I go to get my MBAs in the US. I just follow typical rules of. Initially, I wasn't in solar before, but after I graduated from MBAs, then I look at what should I do and what's the industry that I should get into that has a strong growth potential. And while there's something good that can be done, right? I mean, I used to be in software developments, in real estate developments, but what else I can do something good? I mean, renewable energy comes to mind. And when I look at the market, I look at the industry, it's really small, but it has a strong growth potential. It's part of the energy. Your end product is electricity, right? Electricity, you compete with coal, nuclear, LNG. You still have a position for solar to grow for a long time. I want to work in this industry until I get retired. So that's why,
It should have that outlook. And in Taiwan for Lightsource BP, what kind of projects are you currently working on? What kind of projects did you bring online, perhaps? What's your position directly in Taiwan right now?
Yeah, our first project is a solar project in Chiayi. It's 115 megawatts of in size. That's our first solar fishery hybrid project as the company that we ever developed. Of course, we understand the market is constrained by land. That's why we need to have some innovative way to build scalable solar here. That's why our pipeline still mix of in the future, in the next 3 to 5 years, we intend to get at least 1-2 projects to get to financial close to build. Mostly are the fishery solar projects. We also working on the agri-PV side of the project pipelines. Going forward, I think based on other market experience, we also want to have the solar plus storage in Taiwan in order to be more sustainable and provide more stable electricity to the market.
No, Chiayi is in South Taiwan. It's a very nice city, very nice rural areas. Yes, it's a good place to go to and talk to people.
Yes, and they have famous turkey rice.
Yes.
While I was in the US, I wasn't like the turkey that much, but it was surprisingly really good in Chiayi. And I recommend you, once you get to, every time you go to Chiayi, try the turkey rice there.
But before we dive deep into fishery agri solar, I think always in English is a bit difficult to describe. But perhaps just the current Taiwanese energy market. It's you also mentioned that we had the 20 gigawatt goal in 2025, right? It's been 15, so we're kind of, I think somebody just posted this like 22% less. It's not when, I think especially on ground mounted, it didn't go where the government originally planned. The original plan was actually a lot of ground mounted and some roof, but then that didn't really work out. But what makes you still positive about the general market? You kind of mentioned that there's still a need, but can you describe a little bit in detail why, even if we had and we might come back to this, a very slow, sluggish year last year, why is the framework still right for solar?
Yeah, fundamentally, you have to look at the market rather than, regulatory is important and policy is important, but the fundamental of the market, I give you some numbers like TSMC. Last year in 2024, they consume around 25 terawatt hours of electricity in Taiwan. They're still building factories. They consume roughly 15 to 20% of the total consumption of the electricity in Taiwan alone. They have a commitment to go to RE100. If that translates to solar, we need to build just for 20 gigawatt of solar just to supply to them, to combine with other storage to meet their RE100 just for last year. They're still growing. Their supplier also have a strong requirement. Then in the last few days, we're talking to their suppliers and their customers, the leading technology company in Taiwan. Everybody's craving for energy, renewable energy, for them to stay here, like the European as well. They have a lot of pharmaceutical companies here, and they also need this, to be competitive. So the fundamental in the long run, it makes sense. And in the short term, you just need to strategize your company. What do you do in this situation, to be prepared when the market goes recycle or consolidate and become normal path again.
Yeah. So you wouldn't say that, I will not mention names, but that some geopolitical changes in a country where you used to live, because the context is, in Europe, it's clear Europe is very strong supporter of all of that, right? You've been also as a European company. Some companies export to Europe, so there were discussion about CBAM, and there will be also European companies that will ask their suppliers. IKEA might be also an LCI member, which is, also very strongly like trying in Taiwan to commit. But then we had a big political change in the US, and Taiwan is a very important market as the US. So you think, or your feeling is that the US companies didn't let go of their RE100 targets, which they then pushed down the supply chain?
They are still pushing down to the supply chain. It's 4 years turn, right? And And the company already committed. There's significant resources from the US company already putting into this initiative. And I don't see, so far I haven't seen the slowing down of the demands. And we get called every day by the demand, not every day, but quite often they just keep, when are your project coming online? When can we get the electricity? So I still see that as a strong demand. In another sense, at the end, if we have more renewable energies, if compare purely on the cost basis, actually it does have a more competitive solar in particular can be competitive compared to other sorts of energy or electricity, especially in Taiwan. And I think we can provide more affordable, economical, renewable energy to those companies that to sustain their business growth. And the reason it hasn't been that way because the volume is not there. We can't get to project scale size enough in order to supply.
But what can be done more if we talk? I mean, the Low Carbon Initiative is very active also in trying to, I don't know how to say that, raise the profile, have good communications with stakeholders. One is with the government, but one is also local communities, for example. What can we do to kind of more convince people that, you know, we have climate change, you have energy demands from the industry. It's actually also, and we'll come to this fishery, there's really good arguments why it makes sense for landowners or fisheries to also, you know, integrate. And I mean, that's the idea of agricultural solar related things, is you can still do your agriculture activities, but you also add this extra. So we're not taking away land in that sense, and it's 20 years, it's just grass and solar power plants. But what could be done to help in that situation?
I think number one, that's what we work with CI as well. They are really from the voice as well. There's a not re-educate, but putting the right message out to the general public and trying to give more examples from the other countries and how they compare to Taiwan and how the people solar renewables is not a bad thing. And then right now, if you go to, there's still a lot of rumors about renewables is not good and they increase the cost of the electricity. But those are the things we need to communicate more to the general public, for the voters, for them to understand that's not the case and what they could be benefit from this. And think about it. Some of the semiconductors are moving out of Taiwan. It's more damage, right, to the Taiwan economy in general, and they need to have more positive voice, positive news or examples of the projects, because what they see on the news is like they flooded and there's a lot of damage on solar, sun contamination of water. Like those things are not correct, but it has been getting the eyeballs. Then we have to show more good examples of the projects being built by the developers in this island that can be sustainable. And LCI also doing a lot of helping us to get the voice out and trying to get some good dialogues going on.
So we have an upcoming event where Bing will also attend, the Ribbon Effect. And basically, its objective is to bring together energy developers and also corporate users, which is on the demand side, and also financial institutions, because we see that these three side of stakeholders is playing very strong and is very necessary in this energy transition path. And so like Google will be attending, and I think as like TSMC, NVIDIA, and such company has bring Taiwan to on the international newspapers more. I think this is something the public has taken interest very more at this stage. So I think this is something that we are trying to work on this year, maybe from the LCI side. So to bring a clear rationale and goal and objective to the public and to the industry, like why we are doing this, why this is so necessary if we want to put Taiwan at a position in the global stage.
Yeah. Sounds like a very interesting event. It will be happening after we put this out, but it's good to see that
this is on in our mind.
Yeah. Perhaps just because I think this is also very interesting for the listeners outside of Taiwan, because the Fishery Solar project in Chiayi, what is Fishery Solar? How is it Taiwan only, or is this more general? And what makes it so unique? Why are you doing it? What are the engineering challenges? How do you get your stakeholders, behind that? 115 megawatt is quite size for the Taiwanese market, right? Yeah. So can you enlighten us a little bit?
Sure. It's going to be another 60 minutes podcast to get that through. But to highlight, Taiwan, when they realized there's an energy needs they need solar, then they look at Taiwanese government look at how do we build solars without competing land with the landowners and the farmers, the fisheries. So they designed these solar fishery policies. What that means, really, they have carved out around 30,000 hectares of fishery zone that doing a fishery farmings. Near the sea is the pond that you look at. You go down to southern part of Taiwan. Those are the ponds. Then they allow the developer to lease the land to build 40% coverage ratio on the pond, and they still can resume the fishery below. So there's a fisherman doesn't get out of the job. They still have the pond to do fisheries. Then you solar can build, and you pay the land rental to the land owners in order for them to have more sustainable income for 20 years. So you stabilize the fishery by having the land combined with energy and fishery activities. It's a good policy at the beginning, and it's very good design. And what that means, really, if you look at the population in the rural side, when the landowner is 60, 70, or 80, they're still doing fishery. Their children's now coming back to help them to do that. And the land, if they get abandoned, it just become more issues. And for us, if building energy, it's 20 years. We don't change the categorize of the land. It's still fishery land. We can still do fishery activities. We manage the land. We clean the land to make sure that's properly functioning. So it's really good policy overall. And the struggle of the engineer tackle part of the issue really about at the beginning, say community is not the issue. They welcome the idea because it makes all the sense, right? Who's going to fishery if nobody, my children doesn't want to come back to do it? The technical side is just super challenging about how do you combine fishery activity with the energy yield, right? You can't too interrupt of your fishery activity. You still need to make sure there's a proper access road. Make sure then when they do harvesting, they can do harvesting. How do you design the system to make sure combine fishery and energy and solar? So the high, and you have to work on high because you are building around 3.5 to 4.5 meters above the bottom of the pond. And how do you overcome that on high situation? Health and safety is the issue, and access road because you have to go through. The pond is not like a one big piece of 100 hectare of pond. We have 300 ponds within 5 to 10 kilometers radius, and how to connect those together. There's a lot of technical engineer issue have to overcome. But very exciting, meaning you have new problem every time to solve it, but we are still building it, and we want to make it a flagship project to demonstrate agri-PV or fishery PV can be doable. It's good for the community, it's good for the fishermen, it's good for the energy, for the government. So yeah, that's our project.
there's a couple of projects online right now, right? And there's a lot of development. I also saw another developer announcing, I think, starting of their projects. What kind of things do they fish in the ponds?
Yep. They fish tilapia, prawn, and milkfish.
Okay.
Yeah, and the white shrimp is a very local shrimp. It's because the market also quite fluid, right? The fishery market, sometimes there's a shortage of tilapia. You just do fish to tilapia. The farming is quite challenging every year because of the weathers, because of the conditions, the water condition. It could be quite challenging for us to be there. Actually, if you do fishery solar, you can part of the pond. Actually, the temperature would not change that often. You actually keep the temperature reasonably stable. And also you can have less sunlight. The fish sometimes doesn't need to exposure to that much sunlight. You have a place to do it. Actually, we are working on ways to make sure that this is more, can get more products out of fishery pond, hopefully, but it's still a work in progress, but we think this is the right way to go. Yeah.
Because usually these ponds are open, right? Traditionally, it's also when you come in Taoyuan, you land in Taoyuan, you can also see, I mean, there's also like more like these are like freshwater storage and so on, but they're usually open. So, and then you're shading them, right?
Yeah.
So then, was there a concern also from the fishery side? Like, how will that work? Or is there studies already? Or they said like, it's shaded, it's okay. But
yeah, if you look at, we only shaded 40% coverage ratio, and majority of the ponds still have sunlight. The challenge is now about shading. Sometimes for those fish doesn't need a strong exposure to the sunlight. It's more about harvesting, right? You're putting your poles into the pond. How do you make sure they can harvest when you get to harvesting ways to during that time? Those are the technical design. We have to work more closely with the fishermen. How do we design the net below for connecting the poles? And how do we design the slope of the pond to have a high side and low side? So there's a slope at the bottom of the pond. So when you're harvesting, you just drain the water so the fish goes to the lower side. And how do you design the proper access road to allow the 7-ton shark to get into? So there's some challenges, and that's why you might see some negative news, because initially there's a lot of design and they haven't really thought out how to do these things, and they build it in a rush, and that creates some issues to see the government say, okay, where's the and we as us, we want to make it right, so we do a lot of studies upfront, and we want to make sure the fishery is sustainable. Otherwise, it's 20 years business. Right? Yeah.
No, would you have thought 5 or 6 years ago that you would know so much about aquaculture and ponds and accessibility? I'm really impressed, because you can, kind of got yourself really deep into the topic.
Yeah, it's strange. Like in the solar sector industry, everybody to joke about. Sometimes we become a fisherman solar rather than a solar developer. I think if we want to sustainable, we want to make sure this business is 20 years. So you look at then how to make it sustainable is the way to know them, know your partnership, know your what's their challenge, how do we solve their challenge in order for them to sustain. I think that's always our angle to do things.
But it's also interesting that you talk about this rushed projects of some developers, because when I was really deeply in solar development in 2014, 15 and so on, it was hard to do ground mounted. It was easier to do rooftop, and then there were these greenhouses popping up. And somehow some people didn't put any stuff into the greenhouses, right? They were more interested in yielding the solar. And then actually it's not something that only happened in Taiwan. I heard this is similar an issue in Italy, and a lot of markets, they will think about loopholes, right?
Yeah.
So do you think the government is kind of counteracting against these, let's say, faster moving, more like, okay, let's get it done and don't worry about the fish, right? Do you think that's ongoing now that the market gets a bit more stabilized and is more, this will be more giving incentives, opportunities for, let's say, for the ones that really serious about this and understand it and kind of do that? Or it's still a little bit, the market is still going through some difficulties?
It's still going through some consolidations, I would say, and you always have to deal with the energy department of the government side, also the agriculture side, right? And now it's just getting better because they know who the developer is and what the project is and how we do things. We need to constantly communicate with them. This is how we plan to do things. This is how we intend to build. It does start to change their mind a little bit. It's a trial and error. There's no right or wrong at the beginning because the policy hasn't been well drafted at the beginning, but you need energies and you need to push it. And now it's just getting more well thought of. Every time right now the agriculture department want to set a standard for solar, and we are part of the industry, the participants, to help them to make that happen. So a lot of reshaping the policy or the regulations that they involve us to involve the leading developer or the industry to do it, which is good sign. It's more on I don't trust you and I build my rules. Now they start coming in talk.
But it's often with communities, right? When outsiders come and they have the experience, so for them to open up to perhaps new technologies, but even because we are even some Taiwanese who come from Tianlong from Taipei go down to South Taiwan and then like what you're telling me, you want my land rent and so on, right? So they'll be a bit careful. You said it's 115 megawatts. How many landowners and let's say stakeholders around that area are you interacting with actually?
We have 250 to 55 landowners and fishermen that we need to interact into. And combined with their families, if we count their family members, we are impacting our project in Budai and Chiayi County. We impacting around 3% their populations of the economy that could benefit from this project. So a lot of stakeholders need to manage, and it's quite a big social responsibility for us. But also, I think we've been grateful for the landowners. They are super supportive about the project, and they've been patient enough. Although the long lead time of the permitting, they've been patient enough to wait for us to make sure that we do the things right and make sure that we can deliver that.
All right. So, but how many people you have now at Lightsource BP Taiwan?
We are still a small team. I think we have total around 20 teammates in Taiwan, which is good size of as a development side. We want to build more collaborations between the local developers or suppliers, and so
Are there colleagues that are basically based in Chiayi?
Yes, we have around 7 teammates. Actually, they are stationed in Chiayi. We have our office in Chiayi. Because the construction is moving on, we are, as a company, we put health and safety as the number one priorities. That's why we have very strict rules about how to work on height. That's what I mentioned is one of the things we have worked a lot on, how to make sure the project being built under safety and health way. We also bring our standard to the local contractors on make sure they have lived into our standard to build the projects.
But then perhaps to close this a little bit off for today's podcast, I don't know, perhaps you're super busy if you go to Chiayi and you just see your team and talk to people and then you go to the hotel, sleep and go back home. But if you're in Chiayi and you have a little bit of time, what would you recommend outside of the turkey rice?
If you go to Chiayi, there's a famous mountain Ali Shan that I would recommend you to go. It's very beautiful national park and it's good hike to get to there. There's a lot of things. There's the the museum. There's a national museum, south part of the national museum in Chiayi as well. There's a lot of farming activity. You can, if you have kids, bring your kids. There's a lot of farms that you can allow you to pick and have fun there. And I think it's more relaxing than Taipei, relaxing environments and more rural side and beautiful countryside. I love Chiayi.
But it's still very good accessible with the HSR, so it's easy to get to at least. Yes.
Yeah, it's 1.5 hours by HSR, and you get there and spend the weekend there.
Okay, thank you, Bim Fu. It was a very good talk. Thank you for making the time out of your busy schedule, and really hope that we can one day or very soon visit your project when it's finished. Take a good look at it.
Yeah, thank you, Bing.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you, Annie. It's glad to be here, and we target to energize this year. And you're welcome to see our final finished project.
Thank you.
Thank you.